Inside America's Boardrooms, the informational show for board members and corporate secretaries. Brought to you with Knowledge Partners, Diligent, PwC, Center for Audit Quality, Spencer Stuart, the Conference Board, and corporate board member, along with content contributors Equilar, Meridian Compensation Partners, Wilson Sonsini Goodrich and Rosati, Donnelly Financial Solutions, and the Society for Corporate Governance.
Welcome to this edition of Inside America's Boardrooms. I'm TK Kerstetter, the CEO of Diligence Boardroom Resources and the co-founder and editor-at-large of Corporate Board Member Magazine. It's my pleasure to welcome you to the show. We're going to be talking about a more recently important and popular topic, and that's director succession and why it's a critical imperative. And joining me is somebody that just got done looking into this topic for PwC. Please welcome Paul DeNicola, who's a principal with PwC's Corporate Governance Center. Welcome, Paul.
Thanks for having me, TK.
You, on a couple projects, have gotten together with Spencer Stuart and looking at some governance issues, and this is just another one of those. And you came up with a study and a paper, Road to Strategic Board Succession. So I've always enjoyed what's come out of those studies that you guys have done together. But what did you, when you finished all your research and were done with it, what did you find were sort of the biggest hurdles or impediments to an effective succession process?
Yeah, so for the most part, the paper looks at boards looking at succession in a little bit too much of an episodic fashion, right? It's often addressed only when a board needs to replace a retiring director and it's impending. And you know, that's not surprising because board succession is a sensitive issue. But at the same time, as boards are evolving, as business models change, as companies are innovating, they need to look at their skill sets more broadly. And so a more thoughtful approach to long-term succession planning is what we explored. You know, I guess in our view, board succession moves on somewhat of a continuum. So at one end, you have a very reactive approach, the one I spoke about. On the other end of the continuum, you have much more of a strategic approach, you know, and then in the middle, it's sort of a progressing one, right? So you have boards that are anywhere there. I mean, our view is that boards benefit significantly from adopting a more strategic approach because without a real plan, a board may feel pressure to waive policies like mandatory retirement, et cetera, or even recruit a director that has the same profile as the one leaving the board.
Well, as you know, on this show, I've been on my soapbox numerous times about the need to think through when you bring a director on who can serve as chair of the various committees, because we know that that's where the work's done today, you know, in the audit and the comp and the NomGov and then any other special committee that a particular business might form. So, you know, I just, you know, this is such an important topic, you know, to really be getting your arms around. So that's my segue into my next question for you is what steps should boards be taking to get this succession process right?
Right. So to begin with, I think boards need to make sure that it finds time on the agenda because boards that don't put it on the agenda, nominating governance committees that don't put it on the agenda regularly are unlikely to tackle succession in a rigorous way. So get it on the agenda. Second would be to take a multi-year view of impending vacancies, right? That is not looking at it year by year, but looking out, you know, 2, 3, even 5 years in the future as to what anticipated vacancies that you have. So take a longer term approach. Another thing I would say is set director expectations very soon after recruiting them onto the board, particularly around tenure. You know, I think it's critical for board leadership to, you know, articulate to new directors that renomination is not just a given, that renomination is based on individual director performance, and it's also based on, you know, how the company's needs. I'd say another big thing is make sure that you're Most boards are using a skills matrix to assess the skills that they have versus the skills that they feel are critical to the company's long-term strategy. So ensure you're using a skills matrix, and ensure that you are using the results of your annual board evaluations to feed into your board succession planning process. Last thing I would say is that the sort of final step is ensure you agree on priorities and build a talent pipeline. So on priorities, it's unlikely that in one candidate you're going to get everything on your wish list, right? So boards need to prioritize what is most important, what is most critical. And on viewing it from a pipeline approach, leading boards are looking 2 or 3 years out on potential candidates and really developing somewhat of a pipeline for thinking about future board members.
Yeah, I'll take one of your steps even one step further. I think the discussion about tenure and evaluations and all that should be before they're coming on the board. That should be part of the process, because sometimes when they're on the board, that actually could be too late to be informing them of here's how we operate. I think it would be good when the beauty contest is going on between the two to say, listen, you need to know before you pick us that this is how we operate. Yep. And I'm sure I'm sure people are not, that's not a normal practice to deliver that information either the first day on Yep. or beforehand. But I would say that clearly has to be part.
As early as possible.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we probably have about 3 minutes left. So I wanted to ask you, whose responsibility is it? And I asked that question Yep. with the idea that not one size fits all, okay, on that, but whose responsibility? And then is this the type of thing, the process, the kind of thing that you should be reporting out to your shareholders in the proxy and give them the confidence that sort of you have a plan?
Yeah, in terms of responsibility, this is incumbent on board leadership, right? So it's the individuals you'd probably expect. So you would assume the chair of the nominating and governance committee plays a crucial role in board succession. And the nominating and governance committee, they're going to want to debate around what's needed, look at what the priorities are for the board, and ultimately settle on an approach. That being said, the full board needs to be engaged and involved in that as well. And ultimately, you want to ensure that the nominating and governance committee is sharing that information with the full board so that they can ultimately make a decision, review it, and ultimately approve the direction forward. On the shareholder disclosure side of it, one of the trends we've seen over the last several years is companies providing voluntary disclosure to shareholders in an effort to be more transparent. And this is one of the areas in which that's occurring, principally through providing more information about the process around the self-assessment and how that self-assessment feeds into overall board succession. Yeah. So I'd say that, again, while it's still voluntary, it's not a requirement, leading companies are really trying to provide more insight to shareholders on their process.
Yeah. It's not required, but we're seeing more and more institutional investors asked to understand the process. Yeah. So it's good to get ahead I think it's good to get ahead of something like that. So where can viewers get a copy of the paper and what you guys produced along with Spencer Stuart?
Sure. So very easy to get it public. It's on PwC's website, pwc.com, or you can get it on Spencer Stuart's website.
Well, Paul, it's always a pleasure to have you back. And once again, this is great information, particularly on covering the process of what boards should be looking at. So thanks for taking the time to come in and join us.
Thanks for having me.
And that will conclude this edition of Inside America's Boardrooms. We hope you enjoyed the show. We'll be back again next week when we take another look at a critical topic that'll help you be a better board member or committee member. So we'll see you then.
Join us again next week for Inside America's Boardrooms, brought to you with Knowledge Partners, Diligent, PwC, Center for Audit Quality, Spencer Stuart, the Conference Board, and corporate board member, along with content contributors Equilar, Meridian Compensation Partners, Wilson Sonsini Goodrich and Rosati, Donnelly Financial Solutions, and the Society for Corporate Governance.